Hello there. I'm Jacqueline Hanna, the Food Co-op Development Specialist with the Food Co-op Initiative, and welcome to today's webinar, Branding ×3. Some topics are a little too big for just one session, so we decided to offer 3 webinars on this topic, one for each of the 3 stages of startup food co-op development. Today is our second Branding ×3 session, focused on the role of branding in Stage 2 startup development. Food Co-op Initiative is a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing support and resources to people organizing food co-ops all across the U.S. We've actually helped over 79 new co-ops open their stores already and are working with 140 more communities that are working to organize their own food co-ops. Food Co-op Initiative exists to support startup food co-ops at all stages of development. If you're just getting started, please give us a call and introduce yourself and learn more about our resources. You can find contact information or sign up for our mailing list at our website, www.foodcoopinitiative.coop. Our support and resources are free. Our work today is supported by grants from the USDA, National Cooperative Bank, National Cooperative Grocers, the Cooperative Foundation, and the Cooperative Fund of New England. We're also supported by donations from mature food co-ops and their members all across the country. We'd like to thank you all and our sponsors that make this work possible so we can support the future food co-ops of our country and make them possible. Before we get started today, a little housekeeping and a few tech tips. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available soon on the foodcoopinitiative.coop website, as well as on our YouTube channel. We have an extensive library of previous webinars and topics ranging from how to organize your very first community meeting all the way to how to hire your first general manager. We encourage you to share this webinar with your fellow co-op organizers and who could not attend today. This webinar is meant to serve you and it's meant to meet your needs. We can do that best if you interact with us, so please send in your questions during the webinar. You can post them to the YouTube page if you are actually logged in through YouTube. You'll see that option down the side to actually post comments. You can also send questions to info@fci.coop. That's info@fci.coop at any time during this webinar. Mary Stentz-Wilborn, our Outreach and Operations Coordinator at Food Co-op Initiative, you'll see her on your screen, we'll be collecting your questions and sharing them with us throughout the webinar. So this is a 3-part series. We already done stage 1 branding, and we're going to be doing stage 3 next in just 2 weeks. If your question relates more to stage 3 food co-op development, we may save those questions and make sure we address them in our next 2 webinars, but most will be addressed at the end of this webinar. So stay tuned and keep sending us those questions. Our guest expert today is Nicole Klimek of CDS Consulting Co-op. Nicole is a store planning and marketing consultant who has worked with dozens and dozens of co-ops on their layouts, store fixtures, plans, and branding. We're excited to have her here with us today. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, thank you.
Can you give us a little overview of what we're going to actually be covering today with stage 2 branding?
Sure. We're going to go over just a little bit of what's your next step, kind of reviewing what stage 1 brought to this table, and then we're going to talk about making it solid, making it visible, and making it active, so that you can kind of get into all facets of what you're going to need to make sure that your brand is where it should be for stage 2.
Excellent. Well, let's get started.
All right. So on to the fun stuff, right? Stage 1 is a lot of prep work. It's a lot of behind-the-scenes work. Stage 2 is when you're starting to get more into the identity that you've already decided that you have, but bringing it to the table visually. So you need to have a plan of action to make sure that you are heard, that you're seen, that people remember you, and ultimately that they either want to join and shop at your co-op. I really think that at this point you should review your original objectives and strategize how your brand is going to accomplish them. So if you want to bring food to the local economy, you want to support all the local producers that you can, you need to figure out at this point how you're going to do that. And depending on your goals and intentions is how you're going to start to strategically plan what piece you have to do next and how you're going to market yourself and your brand to everybody in the community and hopefully everybody else around them.
And I would stress that you covered, sorry, in the first one, you did such a great job of covering how it really starts with mission statement. So if you didn't see our first video and you don't feel like you have, as a co-op, a strong startup mission statement that's been developed with a lot of input from all your key stakeholders, now's the time to go review that mission statement piece before you move forward with some of these things we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely. And you need to develop your tone. You don't have doors yet on your store. You might not even have site A, B, C, or D. So your co-op is still around. It's been around for a while, and people are still going to encounter you. And you need to make sure that their experience with you is fantastic and that they're going to follow the whole process of you finding a site. They're going to be excited to shop there. They want to bring their kids there for lunch or whatever else it may be. So that is part of your brand. And this is the stage that you really start fleshing that out and thinking about it.
Great.
Next slide. All right, so making it solid. This is pretty much streamlining the message that you're going to have and making sure that it's incredibly consistent throughout all of the pieces of your marketing. You need to have your environment, your clarity, framework, and image. The happier volunteers and owners are, the more they're going to be excited to represent what the co-op means. So you need to make sure that you have awesome events, you know, offer pastries. I don't know, I like donuts. Bring donuts to something. Make sure that everyone that's volunteering has you know, access to the Dropbox that you have, or that they're on the email chain, or there's some sort of organizational stuff going on in the very beginning so that the people that are working with you, even if they're for free, want to stay there, you know, and they want to tell their friends, hey, you should go apply at the co-op because it's opening. And then they're going to wear that brand. They're going to, you know, proudly wear t-shirts as much as I do when I go to stores and just love it. You also need to be really clear on what you are. So you set your environment, you make sure that people understand that piece of it, people want to be there, but they also need to know why they want to be there, and who you are, what your owners and your members can expect, and then also what shoppers can expect. If a new person's coming in and they're shopping bulk for the first time, you need to have a strategy to figure out how that's going to work. And that's more like your GM piece of it in the end, but even for now, you still have to set that clear tone so that when your GM starts getting all of these operational things in focus, that they can kind of bring everything together from the original pieces and values and messages to what the store will physically be. So the framework, you kind of have to see the big picture. That's just the way that it is. It's kind of like when I get involved with store projects and everyone shoots stuff at me, like the produce department's doing this, the meat department's doing that, and you know, deli's doing this, and everyone's thinking about their own little pocket of the co-op. What the job that I have and what the job that you have currently is to make sure that you understand all of it and think about the big picture. So you need to understand how your flyers for your events are going to affect the farmers markets. You need to figure out if there's any collaborations between you and a local producer for dairy. Whatever it may be, figure out what that is and make sure that you have it very structured so that you can be intentional when you are marketing yourself. Your image, of course. Do not stray from that image. If you have a font, use it on everything. Use it on Facebook, use it on Twitter, use it on your flyers, use it on your font, use it on your email. Every little thing that you have should be branded. It's not going to overdo it. It's not going to make it seem funky or anything, but you're going to be able to know immediately where that email came from or what table you're at, how things should look, and it's so important when you don't have that physical store to make sure that you do that so every experience that people have is with a really good co-op, you know, and not just someone starting a co-op in the basement kind of thing. So the way to do that, you know, you guys can kind of read on the side, but letterhead and business cards, really important. They need to be very clear. You need to have good graphics. They need to be able to have proper scale and proportion, and you need to lay all that out. Someone has to tell you how your business card's going to look, so in 5 years when someone is going to get hired for whatever position, they need to have the same business card that you have, unless you change it, and when you do, then you would change everything. Same thing for your newsletters and your emails and all of that. So we'll go through a little bit more And there's also a handout in the toolbox that is 8 ways for a rock solid brand, and it's really, really helpful, and it has a lot of examples on ways that you can kind of accomplish these things.
And to find those, as you see that little icon in the corner that tells you there is a handout that Nicole's made for us, you can find those at our website at www.foodcoopinitiative.coop/events. So that's where you will find that. Excellent. Well, I wanted to ask you, because I saw you mentioned in this slide that even the best logo doesn't work with a shoddy brand. And I wonder if you could speak a little more to this, because I think a lot of us think of our brand as the logo. So can you help me understand a little more what that might mean for a startup?
Absolutely. Your logo is incredibly important, but it's not the logo that's your brand. That is a descriptive image, a piece of material that is telling everybody and showing them who you are and what you represent. That's it. I mean, you could create a logo if you really wanted to. I can create lots of logos. My grandma could probably create some logos, and they might be really awesome graphically. They might have awesome proportion, really good color, but it may not translate into your brand, because you have to have the proper logo that also then carries itself throughout the entire brand. It should be able to stand on its own visually, but supported and backed up by all of the other elements that are already in your brand guide, in your standards. So yeah, if you have a really bad standards and a really awesome logo, it's not going to do much and no one's really going to remember it, and it's just going to look like a really cool image.
So I heard you saying that actually even your choice about your relationships with local vendors and local farmers and how you interact with the farmers market and if you're going to have a full service store or not, that those are thoughts startups are already starting to have that are part of the brand. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Even just researching what their brand is and seeing if your missions align, because then you're able to pull that out more and use pieces of their mission and your values and pull it all together and market something that's amazing for the both of you. And then they can do the same thing. You know, they can also put you on their website, or they can have your flyers or business cards standing out there, or even just, you know, verbally support you. It's that collaboration that's really going to bring in people from all different areas rather than you just going at, you know, one target market over and over again.
And it sets the tone of your brand that you're community oriented and partnership oriented.
Absolutely. It's apparent, you know, it's very, very apparent. So I should moving into the next slide then.
Let's go ahead and look at some
examples. Perfect. This is Green Top Grocery. They're in Bloomington, Normal, Illinois, and Illinois is just blowing up with co-ops right now, and this co-op does a fantastic job. I will say that they do have the wonderful advantage of having a fantastic marketing and branding person on their board, but nonetheless, I have worked with co-ops that have had awesome marketing and branding people on their boards, or they know someone who's in branding, and they have not been as clear-cut and as thought-provoking as Green Top Grocery has. So these are just some of their ownership information pieces. I actually went through the whole process, and I joined their newsletter, and I made sure that you know, the letter that I got and the emails that I got from Melanie and their board president, and the emails and everything were all the same, and they were fantastic. They were responsive. I could unsubscribe if I wanted to. Everything was incredibly consistent. The logo was always the same size. They didn't change a lot of the colors. Nothing was blurry. It's just awesome. Even their black and white, I put it on here because it still speaks to you. You don't have to have awesome colors in order to have a really nice piece of marketing materials. So what they have here is their letter for their owner members. They have a really awesome kit that they give as well, that you can create your own kit, you know, and you can have some really nice things for it. We'll go over that a little bit later, but you should have something ready so that every time someone signs up for the co-op and they're putting their investment into you, that you can give them something like, here, we really appreciate you. It's well thought out. I'm not just handing you a bumper sticker or something. So then the next pieces of advertisement, a lot of these are for their newspapers, because oftentimes newspapers on the inside are not in color. So these still really pop out. The balance of the white space versus the images, the clarity of what it is. You really look at it, and the first thing that you're going to see is that someone loves some sort of food, that you see community owned, and you see listener powered. That's all you need to know to get people's attraction to that piece, and Retop understands that. So on the next slide, There's some event
Wow.
things. Beautiful, huh? What a
Yeah,
awesome color.
absolutely beautiful.
What I love about Green Top is that they will brand everything. It's kind of like Common Ground. They did too. It's just everything you put out there has your brand on it, but it's not oversaturated. The first picture is the materials that you would have to have, and this is what would be part of your brand guide and your standards, is how things should lay out. It shows proportion and color, and it also shows the appropriate amount of even height of stacks, which you have to think about. You don't want a big 500-page ream of paper sitting on your desk because, that just, you want to get it all out there, not think about it. You actually have to have a visually appealing table in order for people to come there and want to take pictures. Just look at that. It's beautiful. Same thing with the plants. To brand plants that they have there, that's awesome. And it's also a really good example of collaborating with a local nursery, because you can tell that that's not something that they grew. It's something that's community grown that they have put their tag on it. And then it becomes part of their brand. You just see them as this awesome community vehicle for bringing in local, organic, whatever it could be. It could be a t-shirt manufacturer. It doesn't matter. They're there. The last one is a toolkit, and this is awesome because it is a guide to...
And what's this last piece over here?
Yeah, it's so cool. Have you seen it, Jacqueline? It's an event toolkit. So if someone wants to host a party, it goes through and has examples and guidelines that they need to follow as far as visual, what they need to say, forms that they have people fill out, things to send out ahead of time. All of this stuff is in this little binder so that you don't have to really think about what you're going to do at your party. You already know what it is. So.
And this is really, what I want to point out to startups is this is actually a startup. Green Top is and does not have their store yet. They have a location, but they do not yet have their store. So what they're really communicating with all this well-branded stuff is, this is your store. The interactions you have at those tables, at your plant sale, that is your only opportunity to talk about your brand. And a lot of these ideas that they've used here are very inexpensive, like just creating your own printed tags to put in the plants that you're selling at the farmer's market. So some great ideas here, and this is a startup, and you also can reach out to them and get some tips from them as well.
Are we having technical difficulty?
I believe we are. Jacqueline, I think you may still be live on voice even though you're not hearing us.
Our apologies for the problem. We'll get it fixed in just a minute.
Can everybody see me now?
I think we can.
Wow, I don't know what happened there. My internet works fine, but I don't know. So when did you lose me?
At the close of the green top grocery slide.
Oh, good. So I got to finish my full complete thought.
I think so.
Awesome. Sweet. Well, in the interest of time, questions later if anyone has them. Let's go on to the next slide. So now that you have a rock solid brand, we're going to bring it into the visual aspect of it. It's solidifying everything just to the next level. It's thinking about t-shirts, which we do have an example of green top. It's thinking about bags. It's thinking about the mugs and everything else that you want to have in there. There's a little refrigerator magnet and a bumper sticker and all of the fun things. I've seen tattoos, you know, like the removable tattoos or whatever that kids can wear. It's now not just pencils and pens that you can cheaply get on the internet. You really need to think about the best way to reach your demographics. And if it's senior citizens that are going to be walking to the co-op, you know what? A nice insulated bag would probably be a really good idea. If it's a group of, you know, yuppies, they're like kind of 30 to 40, and a lot of them have young children, maybe you can get coffee mugs because their moms are going to be dropping their kids off and going to the co-op for coffee. So that kind of stuff. Knowing what you need to have, when you need to have it, why and where are incredibly important. You need to make sure that you're able to reach your demographic and your audience visually. So, any questions on that one?
Well, actually, there was a question just stepping back to where we were talking about house parties in the house party kit. The question was that we already have owners doing house parties, and they do, you know, have our handouts there. But is there more they can or should be doing to actually brand the co-op at these house party events?
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. You're most likely going to have refreshments, right? You can have stickers printed with your label on it or your logo and have that on water bottles. You can have coffee mugs that do have your brand on it. You can have tags that have information about the food itself to show that you know all the ingredients and you care and it's local or whatever. And then with your logo and all of your branding on it. The colors of the party, it seems very obvious, but it's not always obvious. Think about all the places that you have color in your own house. It can be as simple as cleaning up a little bit or straightening things up. It could be leaving it there but adding a few things, like if, you know, let's use gold, purple, and green. You know, let's add some greenage. Let's add, you know, some purple candles or something like that. Something to really just bring it in visually. It's more than just handouts. Even the way that you have people sitting and the food that you serve can be a really good resource for you to use to just show everybody else a little bit more about you.
We've definitely seen that with house parties, having local food and being able to label which farms it's from, or not everything has to be local. There's a few items that are, like they have local tomatoes in this. Don't just put local tomatoes, but put, these are local Blue Moon farm tomatoes. Show that brand, that your part of your brand is that connection to the farms. Simple thing as a tablecloth and the color of your startup, you can always just offer to lend that. You can have one that you have purchased that is the one of your colors that you lend to people when they do their house parties, and you can always encourage people to wear their t-shirts at the party and make sure that they have those. So
definitely.
A couple other questions, or not questions actually, but it's my question. You know, having these fun materials and getting your brand out there is so key for growing ownership at this, you know, stage 2 development for a startup and to get community investment. But as we all know, startups are on a very tight budget. So how much should startups expect to pay for some of these items? Where can they get them? What can you share with us about that?
Well, we actually have a good handout in the toolbox as well, and that has a couple examples of places that I have gone and sources that I use myself when I'm working with startups, especially, that it's very straightforward, it's very good quality, and it's not just, you know, those pencils and pens that you can get at a bank or something like that. So the things that you need, these are just like the most popular things. You might want a thermos or a beanie, or I don't know, you might be somewhere in the middle of Montana and you want a cowboy hat. I don't know what it is. but these are the typical ones that are very successful and will eventually even turn into merchandise that you can sell in the co-op. So making sure that you have a good source and a good relationship with a manufacturer or vendor is incredibly important. You can get a lot of these local, especially t-shirts. If there's a local place that does organic cotton, they might give you a deal, and then always offer advertise for you, this t-shirt brought to you by yada 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 and your co-op. So there's always opportunities for that collaboration, and it's really, really helpful for their business and yours, so you oftentimes get it, maybe just like the printing cost or something like that. I have on here the t-shirts, the bags, the yard signs, and the bumper stickers. You can see the price of them. That's the average that you can expect to pay. But most of them are sold in quantities of at least 10. There's a couple websites that I have on our handout that shows a non-minimum order, and it'll tell you how much that is, and there'll be a range of numbers, so it's like the $4 to $6. Well, if you buy 100, they're $4. If you buy 20, they're $6 or whatever. So the websites that we have on the side there, all of those are reviewed. You'll have pros and cons in that handout, and it'll go over any question that you could possibly have about it, and then one more option that I use as my backup if I can't get something from these companies.
And a couple quick tips on these. We have seen startups using yard signs very effectively, just asking for a suggested donation at their farmers market booth, and many owners are willing to put $10 in or whatever. A lot of startups have found they recoup at least 50% of the costs, especially on yard signs. And then the bumper stickers and so forth, just keep in mind that you may only want to order 50, but sometimes ordering 200 costs the same amount as 50, because having these things to hand out, being able to physically put your brand, remember they can't come to your store, so you're physically putting your brand in their hands when they get that t-shirt, that sticker, that button, that yard sign. So this really actually is critical. It may feel like we don't really have the money for this, these are just extras. Actually, this is the only way that they take your brand home with them and remember that they want to be part of the co-op right now. They can't take food home and remember your brand, but they can remember it through these products, and they can show it proudly and say, hey, I'm part of this, and that's a big part of growing ownership.
Well, and you can take it to the next level too. If you work with a professional, you usually will come up with a marketing strategy, kind of like a business plan, but it's a marketing plan. I tell people with bumper stickers especially, have a contest. Once a week, all the members that have bumper stickers that you can see in the community are pulled together, and you draw a name and they win something, a free t-shirt or whatever it is. Using those little dollars, I mean, they're little, but they're big, but getting out as much as you can from them. Just things like that is what you'll be getting into probably the next stage, but you'll start thinking about it now so that you're able to understand what you need to buy.
Well, it's an exciting idea, because we've seen that too with bags. If people, if you show up at the farmer's market with a bag, you get this locally made cookie that this other vendor has provided or whatever. So think of those little contests. That's a great idea, Nicole, to get people to engage with the brand and put it on and wear it out.
Oh yeah, it's key. It really is, and it's something that you might think about when you have your store open, but to think about it ahead of time and already have them have amazing expectations of what your store is going to be like is perfect. They don't have to have they don't have to give a lot of forgiveness at this point, because the only thing that they have to base their judgment on is their experience with you and what they see. So you guys can't just leave it to the end or be like, yeah, we've got that covered, or think about it later. You can't, because that person's going to go to Whole Foods. There's a big following for dedicated co-op shoppers like me. It's like co-op or die, but that's not the case for most people. The main majority of your owners, but just your shoppers, are not going to be people like me. They're going to be people with kids, and they want to feed their kids healthy food, and if they don't have a good experience with you and they don't have fun in your store, they are going to go somewhere cheaper. They might even go to Walmart. Who knows? So a little tangent there, but that's just how important that it is. Let's see. So the next slide, we have why. Like, why are we doing this? It goes back to the whole idea of experience again. In order for people to understand who you are, they need to see who you are. So you have to be incredibly visible. You have to have awesome color. It's one of the best ways that you can show who you are. You know, we all use green. We're going to use green forever. It means fresh. We got it. But adding in other colors like the purple or the gold or whatever it may be, or adding in something that you may not have seen that works well and complements it, can really make you stand out. There's a psychology to color. We should do a whole session on that just alone. But it's kind of like Myers-Briggs for branding. Like, you have to figure out, like red. Red is incredibly aggressive. So you just biologically want to move fast through a space. And yellow makes you hungry. Does that sound like anybody to you? It's, you know, fast food, whether it's hospitals, all that kind of stuff, they think about the psychology behind their color because it's incredibly important to getting their message across subconsciously even. Being visible at events, we talked a little bit about that. It's about being out there and having people know who you are. And it's not just knowing that you exist, it's knowing who you actually are, you know, what you stand for. They're going to be able to tell just by visiting your table and looking at what they have in front of them. Know that you are supporting local economy. Know that you have producer profiles. Know that they can get X, Y, and Z at your store, and that they can call you. You know, you need to have that customer service aspect of it there, and then they're just going to know you. They're going to, you know, you're going to be a family, and that's the whole purpose of making people comfortable with your brand. Customer service, of course, it's kind of like when I get to stores and they'll be like, oh, my GM's going to make that decision. I'm like, no, if you want a price on something, we have to decide on it now. You're going to have customer service even if you don't have a member service counter, you don't have a physical store. Customer service could be answering questions that come up on Facebook, or making sure that you are responding to some Twitter feed or whatever it may be. You need to be able to do that so that people see that you care about them, that you want.
Again, we apologize. We've lost Nicole for a moment, but she'll be right back. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, please send them to info@fci.coop, and we'll get them up to be answered as soon as we can.
So while we're waiting for Nicole, we can go over some of these topics a little more in depth. And one of the things to think about is customer service may not feel like it's part of a startup, but every time you are interacting at a booth, at an event, speaking to someone who might be interested in your co-op, you're doing customer service. So that interaction with you, how warm and friendly it is, how informative it is, that is the beginning of your customer service. That is where people start to get a feel for how they're going to be treated. What's different? A big part of what's different about us as co-ops, a big part of why we do startups for so many of us, is that sense of community and of welcome. So the customer service is something that happens at your farmer's market booth. It's something that happens every time someone says, hey, you're wearing a co-op t-shirt. What's that about? The way you answer that is a huge piece of your customer service. So just keeping in mind that even though we keep referencing like when you have a store, you have customer service every time you interact with someone. And when an owner wearing one of your t-shirts interacts with someone and doesn't know how to answer questions, they come out, oh, you're wearing a co-op t-shirt. Can you tell me about that? And when that person says, oh, well, it's kind of this, and they don't have a clear, crisp understanding that you've communicated about what the co-op's going to bring and do, that's also a customer service experience. That's a lost opportunity for people to have clarity about what your brand is, meaning who you're going to be and what you're going to provide the community.
I'm sure I totally agree with Jacqueline, and I'm sorry again, I don't honestly know what's going on with the connection that I have because my internet's working just fine, but I now switched it over to using my phone as a hotspot, so we should be just fine for the entire thing. Please
Excellent.
Don't leave.
Well, we lost you around image. We were about to start on image.
Okay, good. Do you have anything to say about image?
I think that you said it really well here, is that the other thing to keep in mind is that you are really solidifying who you are, not just to your potential owners, which is huge. Because remember, even if you're early stages, when you're talking to a potential owner, you're talking to a potential owner lender, someone who's going to make a loan to your co-op, but you also might be talking to someone who is, you know, the spouse of someone at the bank who's going to make your loan, someone from the city who might be working on the TIF grants you hope to apply for a year or two down the road. So you're cementing that sense of solidity, that you know what you're doing, that brand, that excitement to the entire community, including stakeholders like city officials, banks, and potential owners. So real quick question. We did have a question about how we decide how much to budget for this type of visibility, because new owner dollars are so precious, and that is so true. I know that there's 5 places every startup needs to put every new dollar that comes in. And so how do we decide how much of this to do?
That would be your marketing strategy. It's going to depend on who you're working with for your marketing and what they're going to offer you. I can always look over contract proposals from other people as well and make sure that the tangibles you're getting, meet these expectations, because a grocery store and a co-op markets itself incredibly different than a clothing boutique or a jewelry store. Mm-hmm. So those dollars that you have need to go in certain order of importance, and mainly the templates that you get from someone that you're working with on marketing and branding, like your letterheads and your business cards and all of that, that is something that you will use for the next 20 years hopefully. But it's also something that you can print those flyers at home, the font, so you can make your own event flyers, yada yada yada. It goes on. Once you have that brand, using it is incredibly easy. And the cost of the actual marketing itself, everyone's a little bit different. That's why logo design is important, but it's not the whole piece of it. So you just need to make sure that you're getting the right piece of or the right tool from people when you hire them. And if anyone has questions on it, that is a whole webinar itself. They can feel free to contact me, or I know you can contact Jacqueline too, and we can kind of walk you through that a little bit.
I put that out there, is that I'd be happy to individually talk to your co-op, depending on the stage you're at, and talk about what materials. My big point would be have something they can walk away with. Now, we saw something really great. Azabet Food Co-op, another startup, they have a beautiful business card, really professionally printed, but what they did on the front, they put their co-op's information, but they left a lot of it blank. And what happened then is that the individual co-op owners who are handing out those cards can write in their name and information, and which has that personal touch, and it means the same card works for absolutely everybody. So you need one set of cards, and that was a really great idea. But I would say make sure they have a tactile takeaway. To me, having free buttons or temporary tattoos or stickers that you treat pretty much just like, you just give them to everyone is really indispensable. You have to have something fun they can walk away with. But we can talk more if you get into t-shirts, yard signs. Again, a lot of that owners will pay for. And so there's ways to get that brand out there without spending a lot of money. I'm going to touch one more thing that was said by a viewer real quick, was just that a really good thought is that your booth and those events and those house events, making sure they're well branded, they found is really critical because photos happen there. Photos get taken of this experience of your co-op that somebody's happening. And when your colors are showing and it's well put together and people are wearing their t-shirts, that picture travels a lot faster through social media. You can use it on your future branding. It's much more impactful. So great point.
Absolutely. I love that. Good point.
All right. Well, I was going to say, when we're talking about costs, one of the most impactful ways that we see startups interacting in their communities is actually through videos and social media. Social media being free, but we're also seeing more and more video. And this is something we're seeing a lot of startups leverage extremely well. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, videos are incredibly popular and a very good resource. You just have to make sure that you know how to do them. So if you're thinking about doing a video, I would suggest contacting another local startup or an established co-op and see what they do for their videos, and at least get some tips on, you know, the housekeeping piece of it, the best way to edit, or whatever it's going to be, so that you can do it as inexpensively as you can, but also, you know, getting experts on there. You know, having Jacqueline come on your video or something like that. Sorry, Jacqueline. But, you know, making sure that you have some credibility behind it and that it's an actual message that people will be able to take away with. So, oh my gosh, that really smart person from this awesome food co-op place said this, you know, and it just gives it more credibility than you would have if it's just you, a really well-known person in your community, I'm sure, but not necessarily when it gets out on every platform of social media that we have. But, you know, maybe somebody else will be. So just think about the content, make sure that you have something that you can take away, and make sure that it's not going to be incredibly dated, and call someone who's done it before.
Absolutely.
Anything to add on that one?
I would just say that social media, there are some co-ops that are doing it, startups that are doing it really, really well. Like all of your peer startup food co-ops. Go online and like them and see what they're doing, because you're going to get fabulous ideas from them, and from mature open co-ops as well, but especially from your fellow startups. I could name a ton that are doing great stuff, but make sure, if you want a list of names, you can look at our FCI map of communities that are organizing, or ask me.
Absolutely. And, you know, even not video, but if you go on the different platforms of social media, we do have a handout in the toolbox that kind of shows some good formatting and proportion so that it's visually appealing. There's been proven, well, as you can imagine, research everything. Someone researched at one point the best way to get across to people on social media. And there's different tactics, I guess you could say, or strategies for each of the platforms. So the handout goes over like Google+, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. All of them may not be applicable to you right now, but there are tried and true methods to make it more successful than if you were just going on there and be like, I'm going to create a Facebook page. There's a science behind it. So we weren't going to talk too much on social media. If anyone has any questions, feel free to contact us after you read the handouts, and that's it.
All right.
So the third and final thing, no, I'm just kidding. It is a third and final part right now, but that's making sure that you are being active. Here are some really good examples of co-ops that are in action. These are all startups. Prairie Food Co-op is awesome at their yard signs. I absolutely love it. I love the grocery carts. I love that they put the carts in there. I love that everyone's wearing the t-shirts. You can tell right away who they are. And that is the whole point when you're walking by in a parade. Parades are great ways to get out there. You can hand out organic lollipops, you know, or gummy bears, whatever it is, because I don't let my kids eat Tootsie Roll Pops when they get out to the fair. So, you know, doing that kind of stuff and being remembered is incredibly important, and the only way that people are going to remember you is if they have something in their hands and if they have something in their heads. A couple of other examples are, you know, KCFC, they have a really nice banner. I would like it more if there was some more color brought in, you know, and oh, there's the next slide already. So you can read over that, the other one, and we'll kind of break it down a little bit. So this is Prairie Food Co-op's an example of a table that they had at an event, and they had their banner, which is awesome, and they definitely had their flyers. If you notice, all the colors blend really well together. the proportion of white space to colored spaces really well, and your eye is able to drift through each one of them and stop and read or stop and absorb the information that is being put in front of you, and then move on to the next one and still remember everything else. So people are walking away with a memory that's sticking with them, mostly visual, but the keywords that you're throwing out there, like the local and the community and all that stuff, they're going to relate to your brand. So you're able to do that by props and flyers, info, the letterheads, the tangibles they get. Like one time a startup had lip balm, like organic lip balm with their label on it, and it was awesome. And that's something that every time someone puts on that lip balm, genius, they're going to be thinking of that co-op. Sign-up sheets for all of your events. Have calendars there of events that are in the community, not just the co-op events, but the community, surrounding communities, and try to touch each and every part of your demographics. So I would say have some, kid-friendly events on there, and then have some senior citizen ones or whatever your demographic age range, and make sure that you are able to get everybody active, and then they're going to remember that they got that information from the co-op. You can also do any surveys that you're going to have, just fun ones, any information on the process of finding a site, or wherever you're at in your stages, you can make sure that people know it and that they have something to take away from it, and then they can put it on their fridge or whatever it is, hand it to a friend.
And I'm going to point out this is one great place to invest. One of the things we're seeing more and more startups having banners like this. If you look at Prairie's banner, unless you're in a community that already really well knows what food co-ops are, so that's basically Minneapolis, most people aren't quite sure what they're going to get. And so what a lot of startups are doing is taking photos in other co-ops and mature co-ops that they've visited that really display what they want their store to be about. And then they make these banners with their logos on them behind. They're not saying this is their store. This actually happens to be Common Ground Food Co-op in Urbana, Illinois. But they're saying this is what it's going to be like. These are reusable. They're easy to set up. They're lightweight. And you can take them. You'll take them to events for years until you get the doors on your store. So these are just an excellent. It's a whole new level when you have that behind you, and people go, "Oh, it's going to be a store," and they see that from the minute they're coming up. Other quick thing is that we're starting to see people make their booths interactive, having kids games at their booth. Green Top has a very fancy one. I can show you photos, but you also could just take 3 buckets and nail them to a piece of wood and give kids plastic fruit to throw in the buckets, and they win a sticker, a co-op sticker or something like that. Having a reason for their children to come up and interact with the booth is often a great way to start a conversation.
You know what I've always wanted to do in an Idaho food co-op? Have a potato dig. I want to put a sandbox out there, and I want to bury some potatoes, and I want some kids to come up and dig, and every kid that gets a co-op gets a sticker or something. Whatever that gimmick thing is to get people over there, you would never forget that, especially as a parent if your kid is having that much fun. And there goes those social media pictures again. Look at little Johnny playing with the co-op potatoes or whatever it is.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely
really awesome.
Okay. So what about getting media to pay attention to what you're doing?
Oh, you love them and you hate them, but you want to make them your friend. The media is incredibly useful. It can also be a little damaging if you don't use it correctly. You need to know the saturation that you have for your media area. So you need to understand, do people read newspapers? Do they watch the local TV shows? Is there a national or a regional news show that has one of your community TV shows in it a lot? Do they read the city or the county paper? You know, that kind of stuff. Doing a little bit of background research and figuring out the best way to get across to people is who you should really focus on, and if you have to spend money, that's where you want to spend it. You don't want a radio ad if it's not a city that has like a really good NPR or something. So the ways that people care that the media can help you is they can do press releases on your awesomely branded letterhead, of course, because they will run what you give them. They can help you with any articles and publications. So you'll be publishing maybe something about a local farmer that you are collaborating with in the local paper, because that is read more than, you know, the city paper. So in Minneapolis, St. Paul, each city has their own paper, and then we also have like the Pioneer Press and the Star Tribune, which are like the two Twin City papers. You know what? Most people read those instead of their local community papers. That's where I would advertise. And if it were me, I would advertise more in the Star Trib, because it's a little more liberal than the Pioneer Press. So just understanding the dynamics of who to use for your media will help figuring out where you should publish those articles, which can also go on your Facebook and your Twitter and be printed off and sitting on your event tables and all of that stuff. And then if you have really awesome coverage and there's really good reviews on newspapers or on their website newspaper, the archives, all of that stuff, they're going to ask you to come back and do more.
Absolutely.
Local TV, awesome. A lot of people will do like classes, or they will have demonstrations. They'll bring on specialty people, always related to food or health or wellness. It's not like you have the yoga instructor from the co-op coming. You do that when you open your doors. Right now it needs to be food related or local producer collaboration relationship related. I always suggest going into high schools. There's always an AV class that is in almost every high school that I've ever been to, and they always have to do a video project. Go in and see if you can get in at the beginning of a semester and be the focus. So send somebody in there. I know it's time consuming and you're not getting compensated to do it, but your store is not going to open for a while. If you are in that classroom or you are helping that group of children, kids, teens, whatever, with that project, they're going to remember you and they're going to go home and have something to talk about every single night. And then at the end of the process, you will have the video with you in it in their school, and then it also gets aired on whatever local channels that you guys would have. So just kind of strategically placing the co-op everywhere that you can possibly think of in a good and healthy way.
The idea with media is that, you know, free media is the best. I wouldn't recommend for most startups spending money on advertising. It's probably not necessary. And I know that there have been some startups that have talked to us about struggling to get their local media to cover them. And I'd stress that the way to get them to pay attention is actually to create too much buzz to be ignored. And that means starts with any kind of coverage you can get at first. Do you have an electric co-op in your region? If you're a rural region, the electric co-ops often have a newsletter, and they would do a little blurb on you, put it in their newsletter. There's often someone local who's doing a podcast show they're trying to get attention for on different topics. There are also some national small podcasts on co-ops and food issues. I mean, don't be shy. We had a Sitka Food Co-op just approached a national podcast show that did a little bit on food co-op initiative and how food co-ops are growing in the nation, and he called them up and said, I want you to cover us too, and they were, oh okay, and then they did that interview, they pushed it on social media and Twitter and Facebook, and then that got more attention. It's like, oh, this co-op, something's really happening at this co-op. It gets you more attention, and it really doesn't matter at first what kind of media it is, as long as you can promote you were in media. And getting that out there, that creates kind of a solidity. And then you see the local papers and the local TV stations calling you more and reaching out to you. So at first, if you need to get some validity and seem like a real thing for them to approach you, any kind of media you can get is good media, no matter how small the outlet, and then promote the crud out of it. And even share that, even send that to, if you have press connections at the local newspaper or TV station, just send them a quick email with a link, said, oh, I thought you might be interested in this podcast on us, and let them see that you're getting coverage.
That's a really, really very strong point, Jacqueline. I like all the examples that Jacqueline gave are perfect to what you would do. You would want to have something that is free, preferably, sometimes inexpensive, but you also have to strategize. You know, you have to make the first move. You can't just wait for somebody to come and knock on your door and be like, hey, you want to do an article on the co-op or whatever. You know, like she said, call somebody, send somebody some links, make sure that it's in your strategic planning, that you are getting out there in the ways that you want. That way you can control the way that the media is seeing you, and you can control what is going out there rather than waiting and seeing what's going to happen and have like a, you know, well, I think we're going to be in an article this week or whatever it's going to be. So very cool. Very good point.
All right. Let's wrap this up. Get back to questions.
Cool. So Basically, be solid, be visible, be active. By the end of stage 2, you should have a lot more fleshed out visibility. You should have a lot more imagery. You're going to have a lot more brochures, flyers, basically a template and a brand and a guideline standards that you need to have in order to get you through to the next stage where you're going to actually flesh everything out a lot more and start working on the physical space itself and how you're going to be able to brand yourself into your store.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Nicole. We've got some questions for you. So let's see what we've got to start with here. Some of these we might go back and forth on them. One of them was back to social media and online presence. How should we share our membership drives? How important is it to show current member levels and keep it current? So let's talk about promoting ownership and membership through social media.
You know what? There are certain cases where it's not as important to do that update. If you're moving really, really slowly and you're just a community that's going to take a long time to grow membership, comparatively to the ones that will get 100 members in an event or whatever, then it's not as important to do it very often. You can do it maybe quarterly. But if you have a lot of new members, it is really, really cool to not only put on there the number of members and when they've joined, but you can get them to put their face on Facebook or whatever it is, or hold up a sign and said, I joined the co-op because. We've all seen those, and that's a really, really great strategy, and it also keeps people engaged and they want to know, or they saw somebody that they know and they want to be on Facebook too, so they're going to go join the co-op. What do you think, Jacqueline?
I would agree. I think that every single time you've got a new owner, find out if they're willing to be thanked. If you get a chance to take a picture of them with a statement on why they joined the co-op, that's ideal. Because every time, again, like Nicole said, that someone sees a face on your Facebook feed that is someone they know, and even if it's someone they don't, but just looks like, oh, somebody else joined. But they make that connection. Seeing real human faces connected to choosing to be owners is really huge. I'm super updated on your website. When it comes to social media, maybe just sharing it when you've had significant growth. Now, if you're at 25 owners, every owner is significant growth. If you're at 472 owners and the next goal is 500, then you might talk about it, every other week or so, unless you're in a drive. You might just mention that, we're at 482 owners and growing strong. I would bring it up consistently, but it certainly doesn't need to be every day unless you're in the middle of an ownership drive.
Absolutely.
We had some questions too about creating some visible connections between your co-op and your vendors and your local farmers who want to support the co-op, and how to utilize that opportunity.
You can have a lot of different avenues for that one. An established co-op does it different than a startup would. A lot of it is they don't know if they want their brand mixed up with your brand. You may not be a cool co-op, or you might be a complete flop, or you might be a bunch of hippies, whatever it is. You want to make sure that you are presenting yourself appropriately, and then approach them. Like, hey, can we partner on this thing? Or do you want to co-sponsor this event? Or do you want to have a table right next to ours? Or whatever it is. Find out who your key vendors will be, and you'll know. You'll go into your grocery store and you'll know who your key vendors are. And if not, call me. I will help you figure it out. But get to those people and see if they will be side by side with you, so that when the community sees an established, awesome farm or dairy producer, whatever it is, they automatically relate the co-op to that solid, awesome, reliable brand.
And I would say, think about if local's super core. Remember, go back to that mission statement. Please do watch our first video on branding. You should have that mission statement very clear and memorized in your minds. And if one of the core members, if you remember that video, there are up to 4 core ideas you're allowed to have, according to Cole. And if one of them is connection to local farmers, then by all means, if a farmer is interested in supporting your startup, you should absolutely get a quote from them on why they're supporting your co-op, and get a picture of them at their farm, and put that up on your social media, put that up on your website. If they're willing, find out if they're willing to come to a booth at an event and sample out their heirloom tomatoes. Absolutely leverage that as much as you can. And the question of how often, if local is going to be core to your brand, there's not much of such of a thing as too often. So once again, remind folks which of the key farms in the community already feel that this is going to be a great thing for the community.
And I will add to that to make sure that there's variety. Do not have the same farmer on your video and on quoting and in your photo. You need to have a different set, otherwise it just becomes favoritism.
Very true. If you've got enough to choose from, and established co-ops have that problem, we have to be really careful not to use the same farm over and over again. If you've only got 2 or 3 in the beginning, that's absolutely fine to keep using them. But as new farms approach you, or farmers become owners, ask them if they want to get involved in making a statement about your co-op or being part of a video. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. We got one more that I wanted to circle back to. Is we talked a little bit about having great customer service at your farmers market table. That every time a volunteer interacts, with a volunteer owner interacts with a person in the community, they're talking about your brand, and if it's a bad conversation, that's your brand, and if it's a really good conversation, that's your brand. And the question was, who trains these volunteers? How do we make sure there's some consistency? And I would come back around to it really goes back to Nicole's idea of the mission statement first. If you know what your 2 to 4 core reasons for existing are, and you repeat them all the time, and everyone knows that's what the co-op stands for, and your volunteers know that even just that is a great place to start. When people say, so what is this co-op thing? And they can say, well, we're going to open a full-service grocery store that is going to focus on having accessible prices, access to local foods, and and education is going to be a major focus for us, having educational opportunities, whatever it is. That's the core. That's the beginning. That very idea, again, that Nicole brought up in the first video. Knowing what your core ideas and your mission are and getting those across very well, that's the first step to actually every volunteer doing a good job, in my opinion. Other thoughts, Nicole?
Absolutely. You need to have an orientation package. They're not an employee, but you need to have like a code of conduct. And it's okay to hand that out. It's completely legal. You're good to go. It's just going to have on there, please don't discuss politics or religion with somebody, even if they bring it up. Please always wear a t-shirt. Please do this, this, and this, and circle it back around to for the good of the co-op. We want you to be seen in a positive light, and we need to be seen in a positive light. There's going to be a couple where you probably figure out, hey, we should maybe add this because it might be a very opinionated college kid that hates GMOs or whatever. So you can modify that, absolutely. That is one document that I would suggest reviewing over and over after going to some of these events. But yeah, it's perfectly fair to ask people, not train them, but ask them to behave in a certain way and to look in a certain way, and you'll be good.
And have your volunteers write down frequently asked questions that they're getting and create an FAQ. That FAQ can be constantly updated, it should be on your website, but it also should be in the hands of your volunteers. And one way they can help to strengthen the co-op is to write down those questions they're getting frequently and get that back to the core organizers so they can continue to add to the FAQ so they have accurate answers to share with folks. So that FAQ is core as well.
It is, and also being able to direct them somewhere. Awesome customer service is not always walking you to the product. It can also be, you're really busy. You have other people waiting in line to see you. It can be here's my card. I'm going to get back to you on that one. Or here's the board president's card or whatever it is. Here's Jacqueline's card. Call her. Getting back to somebody and giving them an answer, even if it's not immediately, is still customer service, and it is much better than giving them a little BS answer or something like that that they can't really relate to or use in their real life.
And that's been huge. Thank you for bringing that up. A couple startups have said that just being able to get back to folks, saying to folks, hey, I don't know the answer to that one yet, but I'm going to call you. Can I get your information and I'll get back to you or email you? And they've actually gotten to the point where their volunteers feel empowered to find the answer and then actually follow up, kind of owner to owner, potential owner to owner. It's really a community conversation. You have this question, I don't know the answer, I'm going to write it down, and I'm going to email you back. Really, again, states that brand that we're about community connections and that co-ops are different.
And then I'm going to put that question on Facebook so everybody can talk about it.
That's a very good point. All right, so I'm going to wrap us up a little bit here today. Thank you to everyone who came and joined us. We really appreciate it. If you had a specific question we didn't get to answering today, please go ahead and contact us at info@fci.coop, C-O-O-P, no hyphen, co-op, and we'd be happy to get an answer back to you. That's what we're here for. Also, all the slides from today's presentation will be available afterwards at our website. You can find them at www.foodcoopinitiative.coop/slides, or just follow the link in the YouTube video afterwards. The handouts referenced by Nicole today can be found on our website, again at foodcoopinitiative.coop/events. You will find the flyers there, the informational handouts that she referenced. These will be on our website. It's a free resource, and you can, they will actually be part of our forthcoming toolbox guide to branding and store design for startups that Nicole is doing with us at FCI, and that'll be coming out in early 2016. So thank you again to Nicole of CDS Consulting for being here with us today and sharing your expertise.
Thank you, and I apologize for cutting out, but hopefully it was worth the 5-minute wait.
And if you missed the first webinar in our Branding ×3 with Nicole, you can find it on our website under the Resources tab and then click on Webinars. And we hope you will join us for the third in this series, Branding ×3, where we'll be addressing branding in Startup Stage 3 for co-op development, and that's Tuesday, August 18th at 1 p.m. Central Time. We'll be focusing on how you now, Stage 3, you're starting to actually develop your store, and this is one of Nicole's areas of greatest expertise. She's going to be talking about how you carry your brand into actually getting the store open. Thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great day.